Hey friends, I hope you're doing well. I want to talk about Dire Straits. I just finished this book. It's My Life in Dire Straits by John Illsley. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's the bass player in Dire Straits. This is really, really good. It's really refreshing. It's not your typical musician biography where people are behaving badly. It just seems like a bunch of guys that you would love to hang out with and be friends with. Regular guys that would be playing down at the pub. I think that John, when he's writing this, which he writes really, really, really well, but I think there's some understanding with the band of the great musicians who came before them. You don't often get that in biographies, where the music was important and they understood at every step, at least this is what I get from the book, they understood at every step how fortunate they were to be doing what they were doing. And it starts with a foreword from Mark Knopfler. He says, "We were lucky we weren't teenagers. That would certainly have been fatal. Nearly everything we were to experience in the professional musician game was for the first time, so we had to learn as we went, at ever-increasing speed through an ever-changing landscape." Although Dire Straits received a lot of international attention relatively early, I'm not sure that could happen now. John and I both feel extremely fortunate and always have. It was the era before downloading and piracy, at a time which could support careers in music. Nowadays, recording contracts often don't last for more than an album or two. The music business has become more impatient, less inclined to nurture talent, and more likely to demand instant success. So there's music and there's the music business, two different things. But mainly for us, it was a huge adventure and a hell of a ride, with all its comedy, absurdity, exhaustion, madness, and sadness. Like everyone, we had to learn to cope with some of the more negative aspects of the game, but John and I always valued and appreciated the success. I'm writing this in my own recording studio, for example. All the hard work paid off. I know John feels the same. The ride is not for everyone, not for those who can't take the pressure and the pace, for whatever reasons. It was a different world, and John has remembered a big chunk of it. That's Mark Knopfler in 2021. The stories that stand out to me the most in the book were John moving in with Dave Knopfler and them living together in London. And Dave keeps telling John that his brother plays guitar really well. One day, John comes home after some all-nighter, and he sees a guy on the living room floor passed out with a guitar around him, and his neck is in some odd position, and it's Mark Knopfler. And when he describes the way his body looks a little bit contorted, it reminds me of Picasso's painting of the guitar player. But that's how he met Knopfler, and they ended up getting along really well, and he started playing a little bit of guitar, and he's like, yeah, Dave's brother is a good guitar player. And then there's another story about how they make a demo tape of Sultans of Swing and have a cassette tape, and they give it to a guy who has a radio show on Radio London. And he's like, I'm not guaranteeing anything. The guy's really trying to downplay it. So he plays it on the air, and he immediately starts getting all these phone calls from people saying, what is that? And a lot of these phone calls are from major labels, and they want to know the contact information for the band. So this disc jockey is calling the guys in Dire Straits saying, hey, should I give your number to these labels? I just try to imagine just a regular person, and you're listening to like a local band in London playing a song, and it's Sultans of Swing, even if it's a demo that might not be that great, which I think it probably was pretty great. But if it's just a demo of Sultans of Swing, it had to have been amazing, thinking this is really, really something. And then if you're a label, a person working at a record label, you'd probably be losing your mind thinking, this is a hit. We need to record this properly and set this out into the world, But he goes into it really in-depth, describes it well. He has a great sense of humor. There's that English sense of humor that's on every page. and it comes through wonderfully. Very relatable people. You could see hanging out with John, you know, and when he's talking about the guys in the band, you just think, yeah, these are guys I've hung out with before. These are people I've known most of my life. So later on in the book, Sultans of Swing is all over the radio in the U.S. They've sold 500,000 copies, and they're making their way west, playing Middle America, heading out towards California for a gig at the Roxy, which is a big deal, a big deal. He says, the next phase of the tour covered the big cities of the country's heart, so we headed further and further west, hearing Sultans on the radio everywhere we went. Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, Kansas, Denver, Dallas, Houston, and Austin. Before, like the early American settlers, we finally reached the promised land of California, the Golden State. If you're an aspiring band, to be given the chance to play the Roxy in Hollywood and the old Waldorf in San Francisco really does feel like the fulfillment of some sort of quest, a dream become reality. California was about 6,000 miles from London and Deptford High Street, but it was an even longer way, figuratively. It had been a very long journey for all of us, and even if we were to fade into oblivion shortly after, pulling up at the fabled Sunset Marquis Hotel, our album at number 4, no one was ever going to be able to take that memory or that thrill away from us. The Roxy is one gig I remember in Technicolor, footnoted detail. It was one of those episodes in life where the living of it is keenly felt, exquisitely rarefied. You experience it, but are watching it happen like a great film or theatrical production at the same time, savoring every moment, never to be forgotten. So John describes a scene at the hotel, standing out on the balcony, waiting to go to the gig, looking down at the pool. He sees the beautiful people with their martinis while they're on inflatables in the pool and a cigarette in the other hand. Beautiful women, and just how crazy it all was. Where, you know, just standing there taking it in, and there's the Ozark Mountain Daredevils are down there, and Mark Knopfler comes up and says, hey, the limousine is here ready to get us. And he's like, limousine? And Mark Knopfler makes some kind of a crack about how it's a little bit different than playing in front of the dartboard at such and such pub, which they were doing not very long before this. And it's very relatable. John is really good at putting those kind of details in there to let you know they remember exactly who they are and where they came from and how fortunate they are to be on this journey that they're on. And it's appreciated as a musician and as a reader. I appreciate it. But they go on to the Roxy, to the gig, and it talks in depth about the history of the people who have played there and what a special honor it is. And they play the gig, and he's describing how you can't see people's faces. And it's only about 200 people, I believe, is what the Roxy holds. And you can't see people's faces, but they think they're going along really well. People are really digging it, but they don't really know who's there. And people are clapping afterwards. They said the band was absolutely on top of it. They were extremely well rehearsed. They played really well, and they felt like they were doing well. But John was on the side of the stage where the bathrooms were, so there was a steady line going back and forth to the bathroom. He's like, what the hell's going on? Is there some kind of an outbreak of dysentery at the Roxy? And then he realized as people were coming out of the bathroom, they were all kind of doing this. And he realized that they were going in the bathroom to sniff something. And he's like, oh yes, it is Hollywood. So the story takes up right here where the gig ends. He says, when we finish, shirts drenched from the effort and the heat, we get a good cheer. The lights come up a little, and one or two of the crowd are on their feet, applauding over their heads, which is impressive for such a tough crowd who'd seen it all. We bow and hold up our hands in thanks. From their reaction, we seem to have passed the Roxy examination. But there's no time for a debrief and backslap because one of the stage crew is leading us upstairs. The arm-crossed bouncer guarding the entrance looks up and down. He's wearing better clothes than we are. Way to go, guys. And he holds open the doors for us. I don't stop in my tracks, but it's an effort to keep moving forward. The small bar is packed and all heads turn to us. A ripple of applause is rolling around the room. But it's not that that's arresting my attention. It's Rod Stewart propping up the bar, saluting us with a finger and a big grin, and waving us over. Rod Stewart, one of the biggest acts on the British music scene right then. And was that Britt Eklund with him? The Swedish actress, Bond girl, and the Wicker Man? Anyway, is that Britt Eklund that was with him? And there's Stevie Nicks. Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac. And is that Linda Ronstadt? Lou Adler, who owns the club, sidles out of the crowd, tilting his beret head, arms open, palms up, grins splitting his beard. Boys, what can I say? That was sure something. Magnificent. Loved it. He turns and taps a guy on the arm. The guy is dressed smart, casual, good-looking, tan, late 30s. Lou says, "You guys know Jerry?" "No, we don't know Jerry." "Hi, Jerry." We all shake hands with Jerry. Jerry is the governor of California. Probably the next president, but one we reckon. The penny drops. He's the politician who dates Linda Ronstadt. Jerry tells me he and Linda are going to be in London next week en route to Africa. He's passionate about animals and the environment. I'm only half listening because I'm staring right at him. He's 20 feet away. It's Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, hero of my teenage years, and now Bob Dylan right there at our gig, sitting at the other end of the bar. I feel a jab in my ribs. It's Mark. He says, "I know." He says, "What do you say to Bob Dylan?" Mark says, "Good question." Dylan looks our way and taps the brim of his black felt hat. Okay, he's coming over. Dylan slides off his stool, and through a posse of women, his backing singers, I guess, Mark and I walk towards him. We're shaking his hand, Bob Dylan's hand. We're shaking Bob Dylan's hand. "That was great, guys," he says. "Congratulations. It's some sound you got going." Or words close to that effect, because I'm talking to an icon and I'm in one of those trances where it feels like I'm underwater, not taking it all in. For some reason, I'd imagine Bob Dylan would be a little aloof, looking down from his Olympus at the lesser mortals on the lower slopes, but not a bit of it. He's very friendly and laid back. We all drift back to the bar, we get beers, and we start talking. He's very interested in Mark's songs and his distinctive playing style, in spite of being the heart of the band and quite literally center stage. Mark isn't crazy about being the center of attention. He's shy and modest, but who's going to mind the spotlight if it's being beamed by one of the great figures of the 20th century, the crown prince of 60s counterculture? After a time, I leave them to it to talk guitars and songcraft, and I work my way along to the bar and find myself taking a shoulder slap from Rod Stewart, and having a beer thrust in my hand. Towards the end of the night, the party's starting to break up a little. Bob Dylan's still there, talking. He says, "They put you up at the Sunset, I guess." We nod, and then they make their way back to the hotel. Pick's got the biggest suite, so we head there, and the man comes in, hat down over his eyes, a couple of wild-eyed Ozark Mountain daredevils in his train. Bob's hanging out with the Ozark Mountain daredevils. We get a crate of beers and some Jack Daniels sent up. Dylan says, "Hey, I've got some new songs I'd like to play you. Anyone got a guitar around?" I go to my room along the corridor and fetch my Ovation acoustic, and Mark goes to get his. I give mine to Dylan, and the two of them start playing. The rest of us just hanging out, smoking and drinking. During the night, Dylan invites Mark, later Pick, to go to Muscle Shoals after our U.S. tour for the recording of his next album, Slow Train A-Comin'. We, the band, catch each other's eyes from time to time and exchange grins. It's a far cry from a lock-in at Oxford Arms and back to Farrer House for beans on toast, that's for sure. The sun is crowning over the roof when the music stops, a pale pink light slanting over the empties. We sit back in silence, draining the last of our beers. Dylan is almost horizontal on the sofa, hat right down over his eyes, boots up on the coffee table. Pick looks at his watch and says, "Hey, it's April Fool's Day." Mark Knopfler says, "You don't say." So that's 3 pages in this book, just 3 pages. And there's so much just like this. It's really, really fun and enjoyable. And I highly recommend you go pick up a copy. I got mine, I think, on eBay. It wasn't that much money. And I don't get anything out of this other than you guys enjoying good stuff. But have you read the book? Did you like it? Are you a lifelong Dire Straits fan? Tell me down below. Tell me what your favorite songs are. My favorites, Lady Rider. You know, I can't not turn that up. Skate Away. I have been known to say Toro Toro Taxi more than a few times when I cross a taxi driver on the street. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And Industrial Disease. I'm trying to think of different. There's the obvious, you know. There's never been a moment in my life when I haven't turned up Sultans of Swing when it came on the radio. I don't know. There's not many songs I can say that about. So many songs you've been overexposed to, but that's the truth. And if I hear it today, I'm going to turn it up and sing along with it. But anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. Tell me your favorite songs down below, and watch this video right here. And I'm talking about when Knopfler produced Infidels, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.